Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Gnosis. Now, I want to talk about the difference between sensing and feeling. Now, there's a big difference there, and it's very important for a lot of people, particularly psychics and female psychics who tend to say what they're saying is they're not really sensitives, they're feelatives. And they take energy within their physical body. And they somehow think they're superior for this. And this is a very typical way that females relate to society and why they're so different than males in these aspects. Now, it's a very bad thing to do because you're taking in. So if you're a psychic reader, and I've known lots of them, particularly women who get into their 40s and 50s, who go completely bat crazy mad, and also get all sorts of illnesses and problems in their 50s, etc., getting serious illnesses. Now, these can be directly linked to the way that they're doing their psychic practices. Now, everybody does everything wrong. You're living in an urban legend. Now, and nobody wants to hear this, particularly somebody who's trained even in the metaphysical manifesting. Oh, I was taught by Tony Robbins. You know this, Nobody likes to be told that you don't know nothing, and you don't. And people want to hang on to that. And I've had people who've really objected to that, even if I try and say it nicely, but you don't know anything. And it's the height of arrogance to think that you know something at a high level, period, when you really are not very evolved whatsoever. The only people who are evolved are those who have reached Gnosis, and hardly anyone ever has. Are you looking at the world in the right way? Just objecting to that statement shows that you ain't there. Anybody, the minute you start stating how much you know, you're in trouble, Sean Carroll, Einstein, yay, and all these other goofball idiots who have left us and will leave us nothing. The physicist, Sean Carroll, will leave us a giant stinking hole of poo for further generations to clean up and remove the stink from. Thank you. We continue to go down with people who think they know things. And of course, that's not just with common schmientists. It has to do with everyone. So you need to understand that. And so everything you're doing is wrong. You eat wrong, you talk wrong, you breathe wrong, you have sex wrong. Everything you do is wrong. Now, how this affects your life is totally up to you or not, but everything we do is wrong because we're living in an ignorant, evil society ran by psychotic mental cases here to destroy you and make their life better at your expense, because that's what it's all about. So, every time you buy a product from China, you are supporting slave labor, torture, etc. And non-capitalists, by the way, who have stated time and time again they want to cut the throats of the capitalists, particularly the Americans. How nice. Oh, man, what a world. Does anybody think about that? So, how does all that work? So, we're living in this insane asylum where people work with their enemies, give them money, support them, everything else. They conquer countries and make them their pals, and they smile to them, and Americans think they're buddies. But now let's get back to sensing. Now the point is that sensing is like a meter does. Now when you have, let's say you have a sensor for a actual, you can get these in case there's a flood, and it beeps. People have this in cellars and other things so they know if water is seeping in for particular areas. So it's called a sensor. It's not called a feeler. So when water touches it, it puts out an alarm. Now, did it feel the water? Well, the problem is sense and feel starts to be combined together in people's understanding, but it really isn't. Now, sensing is when you sense water and it goes off. You didn't feel the water. Feeling the water, the sensor would say, water cold, water hot, water medium, water. So the whole idea is it doesn't do that. It just tells you there's water there. That's sensing. Now, if you want to go further into that, I'm assuming you could have sensors that tell you even temperatures, etc. Now, feeling would be immediately registering there's water and everything else that goes with that, where the water comes from, cold, hot, etc. This means you're going into a higher level of connection to that particular energy. This is really bad. So these psychics, particularly women and many other sensitive people, start to get sick from this. They don't feel good. They talk to people. And of course, we all do this to a degree. We're picking up the negativity of anybody you communicate with. So whether you email them, whether you talk to them on the phone, you are connecting your energy to theirs and you're exchanging energy. So if you're a healer, you're going to take energy in. This is the problem with so many radionic practitioners who all seem to die young. And the more healing they do, the younger they tend to die. Why? Well, they're taking in negative energies. And as with most people, they do very little to clear themselves. Healers tend to be so involved in healing, and I think subconsciously they think they're healing themselves in the process. And that would be nice, but it really isn't. It doesn't work like that. You have to do things on a very conscious level, and that's another discussion that, things have to be done on a conscious level. You just don't wear an amulet and it works for you. Well, it is putting out a certain amount of energy, but that energy is not really what you're expecting from a particular amulet, lucky piece, or whatever you're doing. It has to be very directed, or your mind blocks 90% of the energy. So you have to constantly push the mind out of the way, bring in your higher self, your inner magical being, and get it working. And it doesn't shove its way forward. Unfortunately, this is the way things do. They just don't push their will, and they kind of are very lazy and bend over to primitive dominant forces. Similar to what the Democrats do in the American legislative, is kind of the bend over boys. Bend over Biden, I'm sure we're going to find that out soon. But the point is that all of these things is how the world works. And you need to understand, as a manifesting scientist, the difference between sensing and feeling. Now, I'm not sure you ever want to feel. That is something you don't. There's no reason to bring in positive or negative energies as a general rule. Now, you may want to bring in certain positive energies to make physical changes within your energetic informational fields. Meaning, if you're sick, you want to bring in positive. You want to let that into your deep consciousness so it produces informational energetic fields to heal yourself. Okay? But in general, you don't want to take things in. You want to sense they're there for your particular purpose. Is there good energy there? Is there bad energy there? This is a sensing but not a feeling, and there's a big difference. So when you start taking that in, you're taking in everything. And this is a problem, particularly when you want to connect with, as we do with a lot of our new advanced MechTech tools, manifesting energy cells, is that you have to be a little bit careful there. Because if you're connecting with an extraterrestrial group, if you're connecting with a powerful person who has problems, like they're a drug addict, a maniac, have sex problems, well, if you connect too deeply with them, you're going to get into connecting to feelings instead of connecting to energies again. And this is kind of the difference between sensing and feeling again. Do you really need to connect to a person's emotional being to get their empowerments or connect to their stream? No. But everybody does that indirectly. But you have to be very conscious to screen that out. Now, when we make certain MechTechs, we try and screen things as much as we can. But the process where you connect to a particular energetic stream, when it's human-based, cultural-based, or extraterrestrial-based, is you're going to pick up on their feelings. So if someone's a horrible drug addict and you want to connect to them because they have great artistic values, well, most likely there is going to be the feeling or the interest in sampling drugs. Now, does it compel you? No. Most drug addicts have a personality that is made to be addicted to things. They're people that will eat the entire package of something. They're the person that won't have one item. They'll have 3 or 4. They'll be addicted to every possible simplistic item that's out there. It could be collecting something. Well, they got to have all these. What do you need all those things for? They got to have this. They got to have this. And we all have this to a degree. It seems to be part of the human nature to want more and more. And depending on your consciousness, collecting seems to be something everybody, I like to collect it. Well, when it gets to a certain extent, why? You got too much of it and you can't even display it. People put them in garage. What's the point of it? So, with all of that understood, but it's not going to compel you. If you're a person who is drug addict prone or kind of have those tendencies and you connect strong to something, you will then be picking that up as well. So that's something you have to be careful. But we cover this in our instructions for different amulets. But you want to sense things. So when you're doing like ESP cards and other things, you're not putting emotion into it. Now, emotion again is bad. Generally, most emotional connected things connect you to feelings and attitudes that aren't good for you. There's really nothing great about being joyful. Oh, what are you talking about? Well, what's the point of it? Isn't that just a drug? Oh, that feels great. And you do a lot of things to feel great. You do a lot of negative things. You eat lots of food, or you're getting all these zaps in your brain because it feels good. Well, isn't that good for you? Well, not when you're fat, compulsive, and have lost everything because it makes you feel good. So, feeling good is not necessarily of any value. Neither is feeling bad. You know, like everything in life, and this doesn't mean to turn into a Spock-like being. It's logical, Captain. This kind of nonsense is not following what's called the golden mean, the center path. That's the whole idea of centering. The whole idea is you really should never be super happy. You should never be super depressed. You should basically be in the middle zone all the time. And you shouldn't be seeking pleasure. Pleasure is an emotional contact that becomes addictive. There's, as I've just mentioned, it's negative in its value. Being depressed all the time is negative as well. There's no value in that. It's kind of silly. But it's kind of when you talk about positive thinking. Positive thinking is stupid. To psych yourself up that there's only one thing that you're going to, and this is what they all tell you, you can't think of ever possibly not being successful. And I did this for years, and what it creates is a delusional person that when you get to the end, you tend to get bitter because, look, it didn't work. The best way to approach everything is in a neutral thing. Well, let's do it. Let's it prove itself. If it's good, it's good. If it's bad, it's bad. But to think, well, I'm going to make bad into good and I'm going to force this to happen is nonsense. People are not successful because they think that they're going to be successful. There's a whole long line of dominoes that has to be tapped over and hit upon each other for success. So that's another nonsense pushed by ignorant, buffoonish people like Norman Vincent Peale and, Think and Go Rich guy, whatever his name is. Well, all this stuff is a little bit of it's a psych up. And it helps to a degree. But ultimately, these things don't work all that well. And they tend to have a very negative consequence. Think, this is going to be great and it's all going to happen to you. Well, you want to put out positive energies. You want to visualize what you want. But you're doing this in an energetic fashion, in a neutral fashion. You're not putting emotions behind attaining money. You're seeing the money there. Now, when you start putting emotions behind it, that sets you up for big problems. And then you got to constantly make money to have the heroin of money injected in you so you feel good all the time. And if you don't have that, you're depressed all the time. So what does that mean? So here we go again. So the bottom line is you want to stay into sensing, non-emotional information gathering. What is that? Do not get into the emotion of clients. If you're treating somebody with a radionic machine, you don't generally want to put emotion into it. You want to put in, and this is what people say, well, you got to put all your emotion into it to affect it. That never works. If that really was true, particularly in the occult sciences, people would be dropping dead everywhere. It just is not true that you're going to make a voodoo doll, put all this emotion in it, and that it works. Well, it doesn't work. That actually blocks your empowerment. When you're emotional, when you are upset or happy, you are not producing a level of informational, energetic fields to affect matter at a very high level. You're not, because that's not the process. It's not human thinking. It's not human emotion that does anything. So emotions have very little to do with anything. I mean, this has been talked about in martial arts, and it's considered in the Asian tradition, of that all your emotions will use against you. You're going to make mistakes because you're mad and emotional. Now, this tends to be the case. When you're in combat, whether that's life or regular, you have to think in a general, non emotional way because your rage is going to get the best of you, where somebody's going to be watching you like a puppet and then take advantage of it. Now, there is good or bad in that, and there are ways to go to the level of rage where you become a berserker. Now, this is a difficult thing to do and very dangerous. It's hard to do on the spot when you need it. Will that help you? Well, to agree it will, because you will be generating no fear. If you don't have fear, you do a lot. So you can reach very high levels of attaining anything if you eliminate fear. So that's what the reverse end of berserker is. The other thing is the fact that you will be empowered physically at a much higher level because you're going to have all this adrenaline raging through you. Now, how long that lasts and what that does for you are all of a question. So the whole idea is that you would want to be more logical in your battle of planning. Well, here's the opponents, here's what you got to use, and then you do it. And then, of course, you eliminate fear by the fact that this is a process you're doing, not a battle. So, but it doesn't work as a general rule when you're projecting. You have to, informational energetic fields, connecting to spirits, entities, etc., really has nothing to do with the emotion. I mean, a lot of people do go into trances. It's not, and it may look emotional, but what you're doing is you're just mind screwing yourself into another dimension or trance so that you can contact this other level. Now, that's not emotional. If you get very depressed or very enraged, well, that's not going to help you contact spirits. There's also energies you use. Generally, when you get into the contacting of these very primitive, powerful energies, you're using sacrifices, whether human or animals. This is another very mind-screwing thing and energetic. You kill something, their life force is released. And these entities like to grab that. So there's a whole different things here, and I'm not sure that has anything, well, it doesn't have anything to do with emotions. We're getting back into energy again. So, there's a whole giant field here, and you want to stay out of any kind of emotional contact because good emotions are no good. Bad emotions are no good. Bad emotions are bad. Good emotions are bad. So there's no value to it. The fact that, gee, I had a great day and I feel wonderful, and then tomorrow you're in the shits again. Why? Because you were in a fake reality called, that was good, I felt great. And this has a lot to do with the bizarre reality we live in, which is this electrochemical machine called our bodies and brains. You pump certain chemicals into someone, you get certain reactions. The bottom line is that males have lots of testosterone, so that creates hair on your body, that creates rage, that creates a libido. Now you have females that have very little of this, so they don't have the hair, they don't have the rage, they don't have much of a libido. So the whole idea is that's the reality. So that's the chemical makeup that comes into it as well. Now, these chemical makeups are triggered by certain emotional states as well. So what's the point of that unless you're going to do something for it? So the bottom line is that it's to stay in that kind of centered reality so you can deal with things properly, make the right judgments, and life is good. And when life is good, you're always good. You're not, gee, what a wonderful day, because yesterday sucked, or gee, today sucks, so now I have to go into it. So what do? Well, you smoke a dope, you drink a booze, you do all the things that you think is going to change, and they do, for short periods of time, but they have bad aspects. People, the thing that generates some of the most pleasurable feelings is sexuality, which releases all these endorphins in your brain. But there's all sorts of things tied to that because sexuality is so weird. So the idea is that what does this mean? How is that helpful to you? Is your life going to be good if you're involved in relationships? Well, most people that get in relationships, their life turns to shit. So the whole idea is that it's not very positive. So now you're going to get all this other things confused. So, but if you go into everything more sensing, taking the emotion out of it, and as I said, that's not making you a computer, that's staying in a zone where things work out, where you can, the bottom line to life mostly is, do you make the right decisions at the right time? Now, are you going to do that if you're in horrible rage? I mean, people have done things in horrible rage, and it's ruined their lives. Why? So, was that worth it for that minute? You have to really watch that. It's very easy to fall into that. You have to be very careful and understand what you're doing. People you get emotionally excited. Some con artist comes and offers you a deal. Well, you say to yourself, what's happening inside when, ooh, gee, I'm going to make a lot of money. Ooh, I'm getting this thing. Oh, I'm in heaven. I'm in heaven. So this is what your brain is doing. So what happens is that's a super strong emotion. So yeah. Of course, $5, I'm going to get 10,000 back. That's right. And my excitement tells me that. So you're making a wrong decision based on emotion again. So, and you do this with everything else. If you want to sense things, if you want to be able to project energy, you have to do it from that empowered area. If you add emotions into it and you say, oh, is that wonderful? I got all the SP cards right. That's not a good emotion because you're going to get them wrong then. That's the nature of the up and downness of our whole biochemical system that we work with. And the whole idea, if you don't get it right, oh, this sucks. I'm never good. I'm never going to do this. So this is what you go. You're the pogo stick of life. We all do this. And this is something we have to work on. And it ain't easy. But, seeking pleasure like we do all the time, because that's why we eat garbage. Why do we eat salty, sugary stuff and fats and everything else? Because it goes to your brain. Your brain goes, oh, this is great. Yeah, until your heart clogs up, until you're fat and you are now diabetic and everything else from all the crap you've eaten. But gee, it was fun. Was it? It's the same thing with people that deny themselves everything and live on 2 sprigs of alfalfa beans a day. Well, is that good for you as well? Is that energetically good for you? Isn't there a happy medium? That almost puts you in a state of depression constantly. You're constantly eating these maybe high energetic to a degree, but less satisfying. And when you reach a balanced state, guess what? You won't want to eat pizza, candy, and everything else. When you're balanced, it don't taste that good. It only tastes good to eat a bunch of garbage when you're unbalanced and basically depressed, seeking that joy factor. And that's the problem. Everybody's seeking joy. There's joy from this, joy from that, but it's never ending. It's the ultimate heroin of life where you constantly seek the injection of that joy factor because it's good for you. You're telling yourself that joy is a good emotion. It's not. Neither is depression, sadness. It ain't going to work. Well, what does that serve? The point is, though, but walking through life as a delusional dummy, you hear these people who are constantly living in a fantasy world. And usually these people are spouting their goofball comic book religions to you. Yeah, I'm wonderful. Jesus is taking care of me. It doesn't matter if I get hit by a truck. And, there is a truck coming at you. It don't matter. Oh, I'm going to go to heaven. No, you're going to be a spot on the ground. And your little fantasy is nothing more than another drug. And people love drugs. And they get their drugs in mass from crowds believing in completely absurd realities. It is amazing to me. But this is how sick the human race is. So, you want to get away from all of that. If there is a God in religion, well, manifest yourself, and does it really matter? Is God saying, well, you didn't pray to me and give me a dead animal carcass. There ain't no money in my basket from you. You're going to get punished. Really? You're an evolved person. Maybe you should talk to me and I'll tell you what gnosis is, Gotti. So, it's ridiculous. So the point is that if we are spiritual beings and the way you act and are internally is what counts, not how society judges you, not whether you gave money into a till for a bunch of corrupt ministry, a bunch of priests and ministers and rabbis and caliphs and all these other people that are nothing but devious freaks. You didn't give it to God. I didn't see money from my pocket going into God's wallet. I saw it going into the local church. And what did they do with it? So all of this is part of the ridiculousness. But you're going to live in that fantasy because you get off it. These people are delusional drug addicts, and there's all sorts of drugs. Running's a drug. I got to run today. Why? Because you're putting out all these endorphins. Basically, exercise is not good for you. Plain and simple. People mostly exercise today. You don't need a lot of exercise. Professional athletes die in their 50s. I mean, it's just a noted rule. Professional athletes don't live long. So exercise, what can we say about that? Exercise bad for you. That doesn't mean sitting on the couch eating 6 bags of potato chips a day and drinking crap is good for you either. Again, you're flip-flopping. And this is what people do because it makes them feel better. So the whole idea is that you want to stay physically fit. The people that live long tend not to be people who are working out. They're living diets and have proper family structures. They don't fear poverty. All the things that happens where they live longer because they have greater society structures. And this is very proven in Japan, Okinawa, and even in Italy. The people who live the longest, well, they have the best family structures. It's pretty simple. I mean, you have multiple parents in Japan. They take care of you. When you're 80, you're still getting taken care of by somebody else. And if there's a problem there, some other family comes. Oh, they didn't look enough. It's the coral calcium, Thor. Didn't that guy have that pills there? Yeah, it's coral calcium. What a typical Western way of looking at things. Well, it has nothing to do with the diet per se. By the way, the Okinawans eat a lot of pork, which is horrible for you. Full of worms. So the whole idea is that, what is all this? So the whole idea is that you have to stay in this neutral zone, take that, and this is it. So if you're making the right decision, life goes good, and life builds good upon good upon good. It's when you do stupid things that your life goes bad. And if you think that it's good for you to feel good all the time, well, you're doing something wrong if you're feeling good all the time, that you're getting those endorphins going. You're either a sex maniac, a food maniac, or just plain crazy. Some of the worst types. Maybe you're one of them Jesus jerks. So the whole idea is that, I feel good. So the whole idea is all these things have to be taken in consideration and understood. So what you want to do with everything is you sense. Gain information, transfer that into what you need that information for. Keep emotion out of it. As I said, emotions have no value to you whatsoever. As I said also, it's not being a computer. It's not having no emotions. It's having the correct, balanced emotions, where you appreciate good things and you unappreciate bad things. But neither of these take you and slam you to the ground, because you think that when you have high emotions, you're risen up. No, you're slammed to the ground. It's an illogical place to be, being happy to the point of being ecstatic and having these chemicals go in your brain. It's not normal. You get that from drugs and sex. That's not normal. You can't do those things all the time, and you can barely do them throughout your day. And there's so many negative things connected to that. It's the same thing with being negative and sad all the time. Well, what does that accomplish? Certainly, it stops any motivation to do anything, and if you can't do anything, you're never going to have a balanced life. So keep that in mind. So the point is that don't get involved. If you're a person who's working with others, if you're a psychic or a practitioner, and IGS works with a lot of these people and has contact with them, do not connect into the emotions of the person. Look at it as what it is. People are dysfunctional for numerous reasons, and we live in a horrible world that has all sorts of problems. People have all kinds of mental problems, and we think this happens because you're a goofball. Well, most likely, any kind of mental disruptive programs are because you've got worms in your head. You're toxic. You've got all sorts of parasites in you. This has been shown more and more, and I've been reading this for over 30 years, of people being cured of some of the most horrible mental problems by having oxygen. Now people are using all these anti-parasitical items, and it's working. And we know that there are parasites in you that control your brain. This is not some occult fantasy things. I told this to one, oh, is that one of them cult things again? Not if you consider worms that you can see, that you can be tested if they're in your blood. These are real things, and nobody gives any thought to it. But of course, when you live in the ultimate evil, otherwise known as the earth plane, full of the open air insane asylum that we live in, there's never anything that is ever applied to solve the problems. Are there answers? I mean, we have answers to everything. As a matter of fact, we have multiple answers to almost every single problem we have. They are never, ever applied. And you have to wonder what kind of a sick society we are when we have the answers and nobody cares. Think about that. Until next time.